What is going on, everybody? Boilon here, back for another video on Marvel Strike Force. Now, you might see behind me, and this is the Alpha Flight roster. So today, we're going to be talking about the kits and reworks to the team. And before we get started with that, I want to tell you right now, a lot of people are wondering, what kind of team is Alpha Flight? Now, you might be a little bit disappointed in some ways, but you might be really excited in the other. And that's because I'll just say right off the bat that it is a war defense team. But there's a big star asterisk here. It's also going to be a raid team because we're using them in the spotlight raids. And there's actually a combination of text of both. So this makes me actually pretty happy to talk about. And I'm actually really excited about this team because in the past, they were just strictly war defense teams that you were having to use for other events and things like that. But in this instance, it does have raid callout. So really happy for that. The spotlight raids, which hopefully we get to talk about sometime in the near future, that this is going to be an important member group of that raid because it's going to be Spider Society and Alpha Flight. So you're going to want to build these teams up pretty big if you are going to want to compete in these higher end raids, which is going to reward things like red gear, which we saw from the data mines from my past video as well. So it kind of shows the rewards that we're going to get from that. But we're going to start off with talking about the Wolverine and Sunfire reworks, and then we're going to jump into the other three characters. So if you're ready to go, everybody, let's boil this down. Now, we're going to look at the actual kit PDF for the reworked characters. We're going to take a look at the rosters for the other three characters. This just makes it really easy when it comes to changes of characters, and it kind of shows that. We're not going to be going over the main, hopefully by now you kind of know what Wolverine and Sunfire does or did, so you'll be able to notice the difference. Anyways, this is Wolverine to start with. You can obviously changes in stats. It's not a huge improvement, so this part is a little bit concerning. Wolverine's stats, I have a spreadsheet ready for when it goes over into the roster on msf.gg, because his stats are really bad right now in the game. So I'm hoping that some of this gets made up for in passives, but it could have used a bit more of a touch up in my opinion. So those are the numbers there. You can pause if you want to take a look at. His basically now it gives speed up outside of raids when he uses it. And then in raids and war defense, it also applies disrupt to the primary target. So a little bit more functionality. And then the speed up is outside of raids. So that's fine. That's nice. And you can use it everywhere. And then his ultimate, there was no change to his special. So his special just basically does rebound bleeds back and forth. I forget how many times it rebounds, but it does quite a bit. But there was no changes to that one. His ultimate, Primal Berserker, now includes text of Omega Red Colossus or Sasquatch as an ally. Always gain offense up for 2 turns and then clears the deep death proof from the primary target. This part's kind of interesting though. On kill, repeat this attack targeting the most injured enemy. So if he does happen to manage to get a kill, then it will hit again, which is actually kind of nice. So it's not a huge, crazy change, but if you do happen to time it right, you get that kill. This can also work in raids as well. So you can time that in a more manual fashion, I suppose, or if you get lucky with Sims, it might actually activate that way too. His passive is quite beefy. A lot of this is to do with Uncanny X-Men, though, so I'm going to skip through most of this. Basically, on death, now he has 25% chance to revive with 50% of his max health. And then in raids or on war defense, while this is actually really interesting, so I want to scroll over a little bit over here. So while this character has death proof and does not have exhaust, so it's going to be a very powerful war defense team to the point where, yes, if you want to exhaust them or if you want to 2-tap them, they're going to lose a lot of the functionality there. This character and all Alpha Flight allies gain 200% resistance. So that's quite a bit. And I believe that they might spawn with death proof as well. We'll take a look at the passives on the other characters first because they're quite long as well. On enemy death, this is a really nice thing because it's in raids as well, which should happen quite frequently. On enemy death, prolong the duration of all negative effects, excluding trauma stun and ability block by +1 on all enemies. So this is really nice. I think this is really going to work really well in raids because you're going to be killing enemies at a decent pace, and this is going to extend all of those negative status effects. There's a lot of them, trust me, including bleeds and things like that as well. If this character has 3 or more Alpha Flight allies and does not have exhaust, enemy characters cannot gain stealth. I mean, I think it's just a lore call out there. I don't know if there's any specific characters. Maybe there is. Where this is meant to kind of counter. I'm not a war expert by any means, so feel free to leave comments down below. And that's Wolverine. Let's talk about Sunfire. Again, very minor stat changes because Sunfire actually isn't that heavy on his stats either. He's a little bit better than Wolverine, of the old Wolverine, but not by a lot. So here's his basic. Basically now it's 100%. It's a guaranteed crit in raids. Anyways, he has a lot of raid specific stuff. No changes to his special. His ultimate now in raids and on ward defense do not clear offense up. So previously it would clear an offense up off of him after he did that. He also does gain more damage, obviously, still as before, per offense up that he has. But his passive, now this is going to be really important to, and some of this passive is unfortunately only to Unlimited X-Men. It's not being, I don't think it's being extended actually. So now he has this on spawn, gain offense up for 2 turns. He didn't have, I guess he didn't have that before. And then in raise, this is really important. Generate 6 ability energy for self and all Alpha Flight allies. So this is really nice that they added it to Sunfire's kit, because this is what's going to keep the sim alive, honestly. It's what's going to allow them to sim, because 6 ability energy is pretty insane, and there's no real requirement for this. Like, you could actually do it with a non full Alpha Flight, I suppose, if you wanted to. I don't know why you would, but I mean, I'm just saying it's there. So that's nice. And then raids on war, defense, on enemy death, generate 1 ability energy for self and all Alpha Flight allies. So kind of like how Wolverine gets an on enemy death mechanic, Sunfire is as well. Both in both game modes, 1 ability energy. That's good. That's going to really stack up really fast when it comes to raids. So I think this team is going to be pretty brutal on spotlight raids. Obviously, you have to use them. I mean, for the most part. So, but this is still going to be really nice mechanics. While this character has offense up and does not have exhaust, this character and all Alpha Flight allies gain 100% drain. So this is going to be really important because some of the other characters also have drain. They actually go well above 100% drain, but this is only if they do not have exhaust. And then while this counter has counter, gain additional 10% damage, and speed up, gain 10% speed. I think this comes from some of the other characters in the team. So that's Sunfire and the rework to Wolverine. Let's get started on some of the new characters. Let's start with Guardian, the leader of Alpha Flight. Here he is. He is Hero Global Tech Brawler Alpha Flight. So yes, he's a tech character. Not all of these characters are mutants, so that's nice because it is a mixed team. His unique, by the way, is going to be Gravitonium. So you can see that here. Let's start with his passive, Canada's Guardian. So I think we're going to go from passive, and then we're going to start at the top and go work our way down, just because I think the passives are really important. On spawn, bury yourself and all allies for 20% of this character's max health. Plus apply offense up for 2 turns and regen to self and all allies. Now, one thing to note, it's all allies, not Alpha Flight. So there is going to be some functionality on some of these characters. I don't know, maybe Crucible, maybe something like that. You could find some mix and matching here, but obviously they're going to be best in their team. On turn, apply assist now to 1 random Alpha Flight ally. So that's kind of nice too. And on enemy death, you're seeing a lot of this enemy death mechanics. And what I like is that some of them, Guardian specifically, is not raid and ward defense specific. So apply defense down to all enemies. Really, really nice there. So don't use minions. Like, never fight these guys with minions. You know, don't use like Undying or anything like that, or any summons, because otherwise they're going to really punish them. Gain 50% max health and 50% max health to Alpha Flight allies, and in raid gain an additional 50 more to the team. So it's 50%, it's 100% in raids to self and Alpha Flight, and then 50% damage to Alpha Flight as well and himself. So huge stat buffs here that you're getting from Guardian. And in raids and war defense, if this character is not exhausted on enemy death, again, more of these enemy death mechanics. Bury yourself in all Alpha Flight allies for 5%. So that's not bad there. And while they have regeneration, or while he has regeneration, this character and all Alpha Flight allies gain 50% armor. This one is specific to raids and war defense, it would seem. And the regens would just come from the other characters as well. So that's typically going to be on. Now let's start with the basic. Bulwark Strike, gain regen. So that's how he's getting it for himself. So you could use him as a striker-based character to gain more regen on himself. I don't know if that's what I had. I think I had Raider, actually. He has a lot of adjacent attacks as well. So I think this is the type of character where you could have maybe more than one ISO choice. Defense down, attack primary target for 280, and then apply defense down up to a max of 3, and then chain for more defense down up to a max of 3. It's not that big. A 3 cooldown though. Confident Flurry. Apply offense up to self and all allies first. I really like that, how the buffs go up first before you do any damage. Attack primary and adjacent targets for 300%, and then apply defense down for 2 turns and slow for 2 turns. Okay, that's pretty good there. It cannot miss and cannot be blocked. So it's pretty much guaranteed, I would say, unless you fail a focus check to put those debuffs on. Overwhelming Conviction. This is an ability energy of 7. It's a little bit higher, but of course you're still going to get that in raids anyways because of Sunfire's on spawn energy. Flip immunity on the primary target and apply stun. So I like the fact that that's first, right? So as long as they don't have Safeguard, then this should land. Attack primary and adjacent targets for 260 piercing. Bonus attack primary and adjacent targets for 260. So it's 520 piercing now. And flip taunt on each target and then apply defense down to all of them as well. This gains 500% extra focus and it's unavoidable. So unless they have crazy ass resistance, this is most likely going to land. And particularly in a raid scenario, I think this should land as well. So he's a pretty good character. There's some your primary and adjacent targets. I would say that he's not going to be the one that you max out the most though. And we're going to get to that because it's actually going to be Northstar, who I'm really happy about, who's going to be like the heavy hitter of the team. I think every character has like this main like heavy hitter, the one you want to max out first. That's probably going to be Northstar. But let's take a look at Sasquatch. This is also the if you want to see how he looks when you turn him around and stuff like that. Sasquatch, kind of like that. Hero Global, Bio Protector. So he is a bio character. Guardian was a tech character, and Northstar is going to be a mutant character. So it's going to be 3 mutants, 1 bio, 1 tech. Let's start with his passive. He's going to be the tank for the team. So on spawn, apply defense up for 2 turns and 2 deathproof to self and all Alpha Flight allies. So there's a lot of on spawn buffs with this team across all the characters. On any turn, if this character's health is greater or equal to 75%, and he does not have taunt, gain taunt for 2 turns. So it's on any turn, not his turn. So essentially, as long as he's healthy, he's going to have taunt. And there's ways around, obviously making sure that he's healthy, but also having barrier, things like that as well. I would probably use a Fortifier ISO, I think, honestly, to give him a little bit extra barrier on spawn. When this character drops below 35%, gains stealth for 2 turns. This is pretty common, like some sort of self-preservation mechanic that a lot of tanks have. Apply 2 deathproof and 2 regen to self and all Alpha Flight allies. Now, what I like about this is it is not a one-time thing. Some characters have one-time things where it only happens once. Basically, anytime he goes above 35 and below 35, he's actually doing this all the time to the team, and the regen obviously is going to help Guardian to keep his passive up for the armor. On enemy death, heal self for 5% of this character's max health, and then 50% armor more. So again, this is on top of the armor that you get from Guardian with regen on him. So you can get up to a total of 100% armor, and then 50% drain. This is outside of the game modes. This is just everywhere. And then in raids, 100% chance to counterattack for him. So this is now we're up to about 150% drain with Sunfire. And then I think there's a little bit more down below. So in raids and war defense, if he does not have exhausted, apply safeguard for 2 turns to self and all Alpha Flight allies on spawn. So both game modes, they're getting 2 turns of safeguard on spawn. This is pretty huge because safeguard is insane for most game modes. On enemy death, apply offense down to all enemies. So basically, when somebody dies, I think they're getting a whole slew of negative status effects from offense down, defense down, and whatever else I mentioned earlier on. Gain 100% max health for him in raids and war defense. Gain an additional 50% drain for him and the team. So now we're up to 200% drain in raids and war defense. It's like absolutely insane. That's how they're going to heal back. They're going to do damage and heal back through that way. They don't have an actual support character, so a lot of it's going to be through the drains and some of the other ways, the regens, how they get their health back. When this character has defense up and does not have exhaust, gain 100% extra damage for self and all Alpha Flight allies. So, I mean, unless you're running into a Mephisto, you are not getting exhausted, at least in raids. Knock on wood, right? I mean, this could happen. But that's just insane, the additional stats. Savage Strike is basic. So 280 damage. This okay, normal. In raids and war defense, clear one random negative effect from self and all Alpha Flight allies. This could be really nice as a Striker edition as well, kind of like how Wong does when he clears it on Darkhold. So I guess you want to kind of like, somebody's going to have to apply vulnerability, right? And that's why I put Guardian as a raider. And so I guess it depends on like how you want to line up your team. I'm not going to say what's necessarily the best. You know, in raids that you might see that Striker is really good for clearing negative status effects and making sure that, you know, you're healthy and things like that. Otherwise, I could see Fortifier being quite good in things like Alliance war defense. And then he gains defense up for 1 turn and 2 deflects. More defensive buffs. His special, Rocky Pummel, clear all barrier on all enemies. I like this because this is also not game mode specific. That's really good against a lot of those barrier heavy teams. Attack primary target for 350, apply slow, and then reduce speed bar by 100%. Now, keep in mind that Sasquatch is pretty slow, so he's probably going to take this quite a bit later. But if you can put this on somebody at the right time, like, it's pretty good. And he's applying safeguard to the team outside of all game modes. So, you know, any game mode that you're playing him in, he's going to get safeguard. Thrashing Rampage. Clear all barrier. So both as attacks, clear all barrier on all enemies AoE. That's really, really good. Attack primary and adjacents for 450. Apply offense down for 2 turns to all enemies. And then in raids and war defense, this is huge. AoE trauma for 2 turns. So that is very big and going to be very big in raids as well. Prolong the duration of all positive effects by +1 up to a max of 3. Now it's only on him, not the team, but anything like safeguard and all that is going to stack up again. And he gains 500% extra focus for this. So it should be no problem to land most of these unless, I don't know, you're trying to do something really weird. So that's Sasquatch. Really big, heavy hitter tank, clearing barrier, lots of buffs. Really, really nice. You're going to need him for the safeguard. And then finally, sorry, I forgot to mention that his unique is gamma radiation. Shouldn't be, I don't know if that's super surprising or not, but there we are. So gamma radiation, gravitonium, and then Northstar is going to be luminium. Northstar is hero, global, mutant controller, alpha flight, and here's him like poofing around and stuff. So that's pretty cool. I'm really excited for this team, honestly. And for those of you who don't know, Northstar is really important, I think, in the Marvel universe because he is also the first. I'm almost certain the first gay male character to at least get a wedding in Marvel, and so he is really important, I think, to me as well. He is most likely going to be released sometime in June as part of Pride Month. That's my expectations there. Let's talk about his kit, though, is True North. So on spawn, apply 2 evade. There's just so much on spawn buffs with this team. Like, just so many. Like, I'm going to have to do a separate video on all of that. 2 evade to self and all alpha flight allies. Clear charge from this character. Now, this guy has a charge mechanic that's going to be really important. We're going to talk about this. On enemy death, apply speed up to self and all alpha flight. So this time it's a buff to the team when an enemy dies. Usually it's a lot of, but the other ones have a bunch of debuffs. When this character or any alpha flight ally is attacked, gain 1 charged up to a max of 10, and then gain 50% focus, 50% resistance to himself and all alpha flight allies. I don't know why the focus is not shared with the team, but in raids, this character and all alpha flight allies cannot have their speed bar reduced. So it would have been more insane if this was also in war defense, but it's just in raids only. In raids or on war defense, on enemy death, apply slow. So war debuffs, right? Slow, offense down, defense down. I'm pretty sure they do the whole shebang. While this character does not have exhausted, this character and all alpha cannot gain slow. So not turn bar, but cannot gain slow if they're not exhausted. While this character does not have exhausted, enemies cannot gain charged. Okay, so this is pretty good. So no, I don't know how many characters. Black Knight, no out of time against Alpha Flight on war offense or on against them, and then any other major characters who have charged cannot gain charged unless they're exhausted. While this character does not have exhausted, there we go. Okay, there's the focus. 250% focus for self and all Alpha Flight allies. Now, this is actually in raids as well, so I take back what I said about the focus up here. So he's gaining 50% outside of raids, and in raids, the whole team is gaining 250 as well. Gain 25% speed, and allies gain 25% speed in raids and war defense. They are just going to be super quick, and this is going to be such an insane team in those 2 game modes. But honestly, it's such a good, they're really good characters. I'm not even just saying that. Attack prime, I think that power creep is at an all-time high. Attack primary target for 250% damage plus 25% per charge, so that could go up to 10, so up to 500%. Now, this is interesting. If this character has 1 or more charge, apply offense down. If he has 10 or more, now I'm not sure how he gets to over more than 10, because it did say, you know, back on his passive that he only gained +1 up to a max of 10 from being hit, unless he gets this some other way. But it applies trauma to the primary target on his basic. I did give him a striker for now. I am on the test server, of course. You know, and I think that's probably going to be because he's going to be your heavy hitter. He's going to do a lot of damage as well. Shining Strike is special on a cooldown of 3. Attack primary target for 340, plus apply blind for 2 turns. If he's charged, rebound chain for 170 to a number of adjacent targets equal to the number of charged up to a max of 10. Okay? Rebounding. So if he has 10 charges, he's smacking 10 times, and he has a 50% chance to apply blind on every time he attacks for all the characters. So this is just going to be pretty bonkers, and this is outside of raids and war defense. But in raids, I think this has it's guaranteed blind on the secondary hit rather than 50%, up to a max of 3 turns of blind. So this is going to be a really important team to have. It's a shame actually that they're mixed origin, because you're only going to be able to use them in the spotlight raids, I think. Counterattack does break this chain. This is kind of annoying, and this attack is unavoidable and cannot be blocked, so that's fine. And finally, his hyper light twister. This is nuts. He's got this on turn 1. He's using this flip all positive effects plus clear revive once on all enemies. He's really fast, so he's probably going to get this out very early. So no Dormammu, no any other characters who have revive once, and this is going to be viable in Cosmic Crucible as well, which is going to be really scary. Flipping all positive effects, so if they don't have Safeguard, they're fucked, and clear revive once. So any Dormammu shenanigans is not going to happen with Northstar. Attack all enemies for 240 plus 10% per charge. So that could go up to 340, I think, unless he can somehow gain more. I don't think he can, so I don't know why it says over 10. Apply slow for 2 turns, disrupt for 1 turn, and prolong the duration of all negative effects on all enemies by 1. So lots of debuffs going on there. And on war defense, clear charged on all enemies. This attack is unavoidable. Okay, so Northstar is really coming in really hard with his damage. His damage stat is also going to be very high as well. So he's going to be the one that you're going to want to build up the most. And I'm like, the amount of stuff that he can do, maybe it doesn't sound like a lot, but it actually is. And like the fact that he gains, it's just so much stuff going on here. Everyone, like all the passives on these characters are just absolutely insane. Now, as far as how many, I don't know if they're not necessarily characters you're going to want to take to Dark Dimension 7, but I think a lot of these characters are honestly just 3 pieces. I think this is quite common for a lot of the newer characters, that they're kind of in the middle of the road there with 3 gear items that they require. And like I said, that he does require Luminium. So we have Luminium, we have Gamma Radiation, we have Gravitonium, we have Alpha Flight. This is the whole team here. I hope that you guys are ready. You're going to be wanting to use them for 2 game modes, and that's what I love about this the most, is it's not just locked to war defense. And I think this is a shining example of teams going forward, especially for game modes that people don't particularly like. I'm not a big fan of Alliance War, I'll admit that, but because I'm getting extra purpose out of them, specifically in the Spotlight raids and probably in Cosmic Crucible as well, that this team is going to be one team that you're not going to want to forget. So let me know what you think about Alpha Flight in the comments down below. And as always, everybody, stay tuned until next video. Stay safe and healthy, and I'll see you all later. Boilon, signing out.